අද්විතීය 200 Mbps ස්පීඩ් එකකින් ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ වේගවත්ම සහ පුළුල්තම හෝම් බ්‍රෝඩ්බෑන්ඩ් සම්බන්ධතාවය වන SLT මොබිටෙල් දේශීය ෆයිබර් බලවේගය ඔබත් අදම අත්විඳින්න.
හරිම සුදුයි.
Tonight on First at 9, this Tuesday the 11th of July 2023. Few more hours. The deadline issued by Supreme Court to the 5 respondents, including former President Sirisena, to settle compensation for Easter attack victims ends tomorrow. The reforms. Government appoints transaction advisors for the divestiture of 7 state-owned entities. Satosa also to be restructured. Critical. The national languages policy paves the way for a speedy economic recovery, says Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena.
Alliance Finance මෙතුරු රන්නයි සේවාවෙන් රන් පවුම්කට රුපියල් 1,70,000ක ඉහළ අධිකාරම.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දිනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Shanella Fernando in your top stories for tonight. The 6-month deadline granted by the Supreme Court to the respondents, including former President Maithripala Sirisena, pertaining to the case which found them guilty for violating the fundamental rights by failing to prevent the Easter Sunday attack, ends tomorrow. So far, none of the respondents have settled the full amount that they have to pay as compensation to the Easter attack victims.
On the 12th of January, the Supreme Court found that former President Maithripala Sirisena, former Inspector General of Police Pujith Jayasundara, former Defence Secretary Hemasiri Fernando, former State Intelligence Chief Nilantha Jayawardena and former National Intelligence Chief Cicero Mendes violated fundamental rights as per Article 12.1 and 14.1 of the Constitution owing to their negligence to prevent the 2019 Easter Sunday attacks that claimed the lives of 271 people. The decision was delivered by the Supreme Court when 12 petitions, including the ones of Colombo Archdiocese and the victims of the Easter Sunday attacks filed against the respondents, were taken up for hearing before the 7-member Supreme Court judge bench, including Chief Justice Jayantha Jayasuriya. Based on the facts presented by the attorneys of the petitioners, the Supreme Court ordered the respondents to pay compensation to the victims of these attacks. The Supreme Court ordered former President Maithripala Sirisena to pay 100 million rupees in compensation to the petitioners, while former IGP Pujith Jayasundara and the former State Intelligence Chief Nilantha Jayawardena were ordered to pay 75 million rupees each. Former Defence Secretary Hemasiri Fernando was ordered to pay 50 million rupees, and former National Intelligence Director Cicero Mendes was ordered to pay 10 million rupees from their personal money. In addition, the judgment also stated that a fund needs to be set up to deposit the compensation and that the government should deposit 1 million rupees into it. The Supreme Court also ordered the respondents to pay their relevant dues within 6 months. So far, former President Sirisena has only paid 15 million rupees out of the 100 million rupee compensation that he was ordered to settle to the fund created to deposit compensation for the Easter attack victims. With the 6-month deadline to end tomorrow, the former president filed a motion through his lawyers requesting that he be allowed to pay the remaining sum in 10 installments of 8.5 million rupees each, starting from 30th of June 2024 to 20th of June 2033. In his motion, the former president explained that he receives a pension of 97,500 rupees as the former president, alongside a sum of 54,285 rupees for his services as a member of parliament. Meanwhile, former IGP Pujith Jayasundara has paid 1.75 million rupees of the 75 million rupees the court ordered him to pay. Former Defence Secretary Hemasiri Fernando has paid 1 million rupees out of his 50 million rupee payment, while former National Intelligence Chief Cicero Mendes settled 5 million rupees of the 10 million rupee compensation he has to settle. Former State Intelligence Chief Nilantha Jayawardena has paid 4.1 million rupees from the 75 million rupee compensation that was ordered by the court for him to settle.
Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena says the implementation of the National Languages Policy will help overcome communication barriers, thereby paving the way for a speedy economic recovery. Meanwhile, Canadian High Commissioner to Sri Lanka, Eric Walsh, emphasized the need for the participation of all ministries and departments of the government for the successful implementation of the National Languages Policy.
A conference of the National Languages Equality Advancement Project in collaboration with the Ministry of Public Administration, Home Affairs, Provincial Councils and Local Government and the Canadian Government was held in Colombo today under the patronage of Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena.
Assuring language rights in multi-ethnic and multicultural societies such as ours affords minorities respect for their cultural, ethnic, and religious identities. Implementation of an official languages policy by a society and its institutions enables linguistic minorities to see themselves as integral to the country as a whole. We believe our differences can strengthen us and bring us together, but it takes effort and it is not always comfortable. Making these efforts to bridge linguistic divides, to respect language rights, and to become bilingual or multilingual as a society, these are ways to heal ethnic divides and achieve reconciliation and social cohesion. In Sri Lanka, the official languages policy enshrines the right of every citizen to access public services in the official language of their choice. Effective implementation of this policy requires participation of all ministries and departments of the government of Sri Lanka and all levels of government, including local authorities, as well as collaborative, constructive cooperation between diverse partners.
In implementation, many areas have been covered. Communication rights involve freedom of opinion and expression, participation in one's own culture, linguistic rights, rights to continue education, privacy as well as assemble. The official languages policy of Sri Lanka has been formulated with this vision. Its objective is also to enhance acceptance by the Sri Lankan women and men of the cultural diversity in the country. Overcoming the communication barriers also help for speedy economic development and ensuring uniformity in development. That in turn helps to reduce poverty and improve economic and social equality.
Orders related to the granting of petroleum production and distributing licenses have been published in a gazette. Under the Petroleum Products Special Provisions Act, relevant orders have been issued by the Minister of Power and Energy, Kanchana Wijesekara. Accordingly, several conditions have been presented to authorize the Secretary of the Ministry when granting a license. The gazette states that if an applicant comes forward to import, export, sell, supply or distribute petroleum within the country, it must be a registered entity under the Companies Act and must comply with the Board of Investment orders. Further, the license for market participants will be valid for 20 years upon payment of a license fee of $2 million in each and every year on or prior to the date specified by the Secretary. The government appointed transaction advisors for the divestiture of 7 identified state-owned enterprises. According to State-Owned Enterprises Restructuring Unit, the decision is in line with the policy directive set by the government and aims to ensure the effective and transparent divestiture of key entities. The unit also noted that these divestitures are expected to contribute towards sustainable economic growth and a more competitive economy in Sri Lanka, whilst better safeguarding citizens' interests.
According to the State-Owned Enterprise Restructuring Unit, the decision is in line with the policy directives set by the government and aims to ensure the effective and transparent divestiture of key entities. Accordingly, the Cabinet of Ministers has approved the appointment of the International Finance Corporation, a member of the World Bank Group, for the divestiture of Sri Lankan Airlines, Lanka Hospitals Corporation and Sri Lanka Telecom. Deloitte India was appointed for the divestiture of Litrogas and Canville Holdings, while the divestiture of hotel developers will be handled by Colliers International Consultancy and Valuation Singapore together with Platinum Advisors. Alvarez and Marcel Middle East, together with Capital Alliance Partners Limited, will be in charge of the divestiture of Sri Lanka Insurance Corporation. The State-Owned Enterprise Restructuring Unit said the appointment of advisors for Sri Lanka Insurance Corporation, Hotel Developers Lanka, Canville Holdings and Litrogas was carried out through a competitive bidding process following government's consultant procurement guidelines. The SOE Restructuring Unit added that the agreements with respect to these appointments will be concluded soon, setting the stage for the next phase of the divestiture process, including investor engagement. To ensure transparency in the divestiture process, the unit noted that prospective investors will be invited to express interest via advertisements to be published in both the local and international press. Further, investors shortlisted via the EOI process will be provided access to data rooms populated with information necessary for a comprehensive due diligence. Thereafter, the unit stated that such investors will be requested to submit both technical and financial proposals in response for a request for proposals. The unit also noted that these divestitures are expected to contribute towards sustainable economic growth and a more competitive economy in Sri Lanka, whilst better safeguarding citizens' interests.
මේ රාජ්‍ය ව්‍යවසායන් පුද්ගලීකරණය කිරීම සඳහා හෝ ප්‍රතිව්‍යුහගත කිරීම සඳහා හෝ හවුල් ව්‍යාපාර ආරම්භීම සඳහා හෝ විශේෂඥතාවයකින් යුත් ජාත්‍යන්තර අධ්‍යක්ෂින් සහිත අයගේ සේවය රටට අවශ්‍ය වෙනවා. ඒ අනුව මේ ආයතන විසින් අපේ රටේ අපිට සිතෙන් ගියාව අනුව සරල මතුවිට ක්‍රමවේද වෙනුවට වඩා පුළුල් අධ්‍යයනයන් කළා. වහාරික විගණන හෝ ඒ හා සමාන ක්‍රියාමාර්ග අනුගමනය කළා. මේවායේ වත්කම් වගකීම් නිසි ලෙස අඳුනගෙන ඒවා නිසි පරිදි ඇස්තමේන්තු කළා. ඒ සඳහා ලබාගත හැකි වඩා වාසිදායක ප්‍රතිෂ්ඨාවයන් ලබා ගැනීම සඳහා කටයුතු කිරීම මේ විශේෂඥ උපදේශකයන් ලබා තමයි සිදුවෙන්නේ.
More news on the other side of this break. Stay tuned.
ගොඩමඩ පෙරලි කරන බලපුළුවන්කාරයා මහින්ද්‍රා යුවෝ ටීමෝ වෙතින්. වැඩම ගොඩයි ගොඩම තමයි ස්වරාජ් ට්‍රැක්ටර් ටීමෝ වෙතින්. අපේ ගෙදරත් ආපිකෝ මෙට්‍රස් තමයි. මාදිලි රසකින් යුත් මෙට්ටලුවේ ප්‍රමුඛයා ආපිකෝ මෙට්‍රස් සැපනින්දට සැප මෙට්ට.
Welcome back in more news. Former parliamentarian of the United National Party, Ravi Karunanayake, says the opposition is unhappy with the development achieved by the government led by President Ranil Wickremesinghe. With that, here are some of the views expressed in the political stage.
ඉතින් විපක්ෂ නොකියුවේ මොකද්ද? IMF එන්නේ නැහැ කිව්වා, බංකොලොත් භාවය එනමයි කිව්වා, රට ආඝාතයට යනමයි කිව්වා. ඉතින් මේ කියන හැම දෙයකටම ප්‍රතිවිරුද්ධ දෙයක් තමයි වුනේ. රට ඉදිරියට ගියා, පෝලිං නැති වුණාද? ඒගොල්ලන්ට සතුටු වන්නේ පෝලිං තියාගෙන ඉන්න යුගයක් වෙන්න ඇති. ඉතින් ඒව නැති වුනහම මම හිතන්නේ ප්‍රශ්නයක් ඇති වෙලා තියෙනවා. ඉතින් ඒවට උත්තර දෙන්න බෑ අපට.
ණයට අරන් සැපට කාලා ජොලියේ හිටපු ක්‍රමේ කඩම් වැටුනේ. දැන් ආයි කරන්නේ ඒ ක්‍රමෙයිමනේ. ඉන්දියාවෙන් කීයක් හරි ඉල්ල ගන්න යනවා, ලෝක බැංකුවෙන් කීයක් හරි ඉල්ල ගන්නවා, තව ජපානයෙන් කීයක් හරි එනකම් බලන් ඉන්නවා. ඒතකොට ණයතෝගේ තවත් වැඩි වෙනවා. ඒතකොට මේ ණයතෝගේ තව වැඩි කරගෙන ආය අමාරු වැටෙන්නේ නැද්ද?
අපේ හිටපු ජනාධිපති ගෝඨාභය රාජපක්ෂ මහත්මයා මේ පක්ෂ ප්‍රතිපත්තිය හරියට හඳුනා නොගත්ත නිසා වෙන්න ඇති ඒ අඩුපාඩු වෙන්න ඇත්තේ. එතුමා නැති වුණා කියලා අපේ පක්ෂේ අපේ කටයුතු ටික අපි නිවැරදිව අපි ඉස්සරහට අරයි යනවා කියන එක ප්‍රකාශ කරන්න ඕනේ.
It was revealed at the Sectoral Oversight Committee on Foreign Employment and Labour that several plantation companies have defaulted on EPF payments. During the committee meeting, it has also been revealed before the committee that due to contradictions in the information given about 700 million rupees paid by the companies in the estate sector, it has not been possible to account. Accordingly, the chairman of the committee instructed the representatives of the plantation companies to protect the employees and to carry out the arrears to be paid to the EPF and the current monthly payments in a systematic manner in order to avoid future inconveniences. Further, the committee advised the officials that by starting the accounts according to the national identity card number, the problems of having multiple accounts for the same person can be avoided. CEO and Secretary General of the National Chamber of Exporters, Shyam Marikar, says exporters welcome the government's domestic debt optimization strategy, adding that it will help reduce interest rates, which will make more funds available for investors to expand operations. In our segment, Debt Treatment, What's Next?, Marikar said debt sustainability is essential to boost investor confidence.
making the debt sustainable is key for Sri Lanka in terms of promoting economic growth, ensuring financial sector stability, and also to generate investor confidence. Now, with regards to the exporters, when the announcement was made by the president of the country himself, the good news was that the interest rates will be reduced. So this means the exporters will borrow more for their operations, for their export processing, so on. Now, we know that there were times the exporters had to pay something in the range of 32 to 33% when they were borrowing for their working capital. So this will be a good move, and surely the exporters will borrow money at a low cost, which will be really beneficial to them, because Sri Lankan exporters at present are working on very thin margins. So this will give them that a little bit of benefit. It will encourage them to borrow and invest in expanding their operations. So the exporters are taking this in a very positive manner.
The Colombo bourse ended higher today following gains in consumer staples and industrial stocks. The CSE All-Share Index settled 0.04% up at 10,351.81, gaining for 7 straight sessions, its longest streak of gains since early December 2022. Brown's Investment and Cargill's were the top gainers on the CSE All-Share, rising 3.08% and 3.55% respectively. Trading volume on the CSE All-Share Index rose to 131.5 million shares from 103.2 million shares in the previous session. The equity market's turnover rose to 2.6 billion rupees from 2.1 billion rupees in the previous session. Food, beverage and tobacco sector was the top contributor to the market turnover, while the capital goods sector was the second highest contributor. Foreign investors were net sellers, offloading stocks worth 380.2 million rupees, while domestic investors were net buyers, purchasing shares worth 2.4 billion rupees. Now let's have a look at how the rupee traded against other major currencies during the day. Oil prices were slightly altered today as traders weighed supply cuts by the world's biggest oil exporters, as well as hopes for higher demand in the developing world in the second half of 2023 against a sluggish global economic outlook. Meanwhile, markets are currently expecting US inflation statistics tomorrow to determine if price pressures are still easing, which could provide insights on the interest rate outlook.
Brent crude futures were up 2 cents at $77.71 a barrel, and US West Texas Intermediate crude was up 5 cents at $73.04. The benchmark prices were boosted by planned supply reductions from major exporters Saudi Arabia and Russia for August. The US dollars also received support as it dropped to a 2-month low. A weaker dollar results in crude being cheaper for other currency holders and often boosts oil demand. Markets are anticipating US inflation statistics to see whether price pressures are continuing to ease, which may provide insights on the interest rate outlook. Markets are slightly calmed by indicators that the months of monetary policy tightening are about to cease, despite the predictions of central bank officials that the US Federal Reserve will hike interest rates even further to control inflation. Anxiety is still palpable that recession fears could lead to downgrades in oil demand. The International Energy Agency continues to stand firm with the expectation that oil demand from China and developing countries, combined with recently announced supply cuts, is likely to keep the market tight in the second half of the year despite a sluggish global economy. Analysts further said that China's decision to boost support for its real estate sector bolstered the hope for an uptick in demand. Meanwhile, several sources, as reported by Reuters, have noted that top buyer China has again requested less supply from the world's biggest oil exporter, Saudi Aramco.
With that, we wrap up tonight's edition of First at 9. Thank you for joining. I'm Shanella Fernando. Have a good night.
For news News and information you can trust 24 hours a day. Visit AdaDerana.lk.